The U.S. is using a submarine to send a message to Iran to stay out of Israel's war against Hamas. U.S. Central Command posted this photo of a guided missile submarine apparently heading through the Suez Canal. That sub contains up to 154 extremely powerful Tomahawk cruise missiles on board. It is very rare for the Pentagon to reveal anything about the locations of its missile subs. Telling the world that this sub is now in the region is a clear message to Iran and its proxies to leave Israel alone. So let's bring in CNN Pentagon correspondent Oren Liebermann with more on this. So despite being forthcoming about these additional reinforcements, Oren, we continue to see an increase in the number of attacks against U.S. forces in the region. Most believe that they are at the hands of Iranian proxies. So what does that say about the type of deterrence the U.S. is using right now?
Correct. So let's deal with both of those separately. First, there's the issue of the submarine, a guided missile submarine, an Ohio class, heading through the Suez Canal there, and that joins a list of U.S. forces, certainly naval forces, already in the region. 2 carrier strike groups, an amphibious ready group. That's more than 10,000 sailors right there alone, as well as that submarine. The Navy and the Pentagon are normally very secretive about submarine operations, so when you see them surface, it is very much a statement, as it is the case here, the Ohio class sub transiting through what appears to be the Suez Canal there, a message very much to Iran and its proxies, but they have not been silent either. The U.S. has attributed many of the attacks, and we've seen 38 since October 17th against U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria, many of those attributed to or blamed on Iran and its proxies in the region. Most of those have been carried out by suicide drones, one-way attack drones, or rocket attacks. There have been about 20 minor injuries to U.S. forces. The vast majority of those attacks were intercepted by essentially defensive measures at the U.S. facilities and U.S. positions in Iraq and Syria. But the barrage has kept up at a fairly steady pace. These are not large barrages. These are almost sort of ones and twos when it comes to rockets and drones, but they are still significant because that message of deterrence clearly not getting through to the extent that it's supposed to, or at least to the extent that the Pentagon wants it to. So this is something the U.S. is keeping a very close eye on. Do these militias in Iraq and Syria try to get more involved? Do they up the pressure and up the attacks on U.S. forces? That is something the Pentagon is watching very closely, Bianna.
Yeah, we're getting word now that President Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this morning to discuss the latest developments in Israel and its war on Hamas. CNN Pentagon correspondent Oren Liebermann, thank you.
All right, I want to turn now to Israel's war against Hamas, because what we saw over the weekend may indeed have been one of Israel's heaviest bombardments of Gaza yet. The war-torn territory really getting pummeled overnight, both in the air and on the ground as well. The IDF is saying that it has cut off the northern part of the enclave from the south, effectively splitting Gaza into 2 parts, and warning that its forces will continue to attack the enclave with strength.
Israel is urging civilians to escape to the south in order to avoid the airstrikes, but many say there is just nowhere safe to run. The death toll throughout Gaza is skyrocketing. The Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health says there are more than 10,000 Palestinians who have been killed since the war began last month, most of them women and children.
Yeah, the U.S. Secretary of State, meantime, wrapping up a whirlwind diplomatic tour in the region. Earlier, he's been on these trips so many times in the past few weeks, but before leaving Turkey, Antony Blinken underscored the importance of protecting all civilian lives.
We know the deep concern here for the terrible toll that Gaza is taking on Palestinians, on men, women, and children in Gaza, innocent civilians, a concern that we share and that we're working on every single day. We've engaged the Israelis on steps that they can take to minimize civilian casualties.
All right, CNN's Jeremy Diamond joins us live now from Sderot in southern Israel. Jeremy, it is highly likely that the IDF is going to be officially entering Gaza City in the coming days. Just walk us through how the IDF expects that Hamas is actually preparing for that moment.
Well, there's no question that the Israeli military has prepared for the fact that Hamas has been reinforcing its positions inside of Gaza City, which is Hamas's stronghold in northern Gaza. And, over the weekend when I was inside Gaza with Israeli forces, it was very clear that even though they say they have cut off northern from southern Gaza, the commanders on the ground were very clear to me that they understand that Hamas still maintains extensive tunnel capabilities below ground that allows their fighters to flow from north to south, and that also presents a danger to those forces for potential ambushes by Hamas fighters. And there is nowhere that Hamas has more tunneling capabilities, it appears, than inside the densely populated urban areas of Gaza City. As of yet, Israeli forces say that they have encircled that city, that they have cut off northern from southern Gaza. But what they have yet to do is go deep into Gaza City to engage in what will be the prospect of very bloody, deadly combat in a very urban and dense environment. But what Israel has been doing to prepare for the possibility of a significant ground incursion into Gaza City is it has been pummeling northern Gaza with airstrikes. Overnight, 450 targets were struck by Israel's military. We watched last night as many of those strikes were taking place, very bright flashes of light, very loud booms, and we are watching once again as night has fallen here as those strikes have resumed with quite significant intensity. Last night, what we also saw was communications in Gaza being effectively shut down. Some of those have resumed today, but it was notable to see that because communications have typically been shut down at very significant moments in Israel's campaign against Gaza. So we will see whether Israel decides to actually go deep into Gaza City. Clearly, they have encircled the area. They say that they are establishing a corridor for civilians to flee from north to south. We know that in the past, that has not always been a 100% guarantee or close to it of safety for those civilians. And so a lot remains to be seen as Israel's military campaign develops in the coming days.
Yeah, a lot of the civilians in the north simply have nowhere to go, even though they have been told to head south. Jeremy Diamond, live for us there. Thank you so much.